Welcome to this course on strategic management. I intend to cover this course in 7 modules. These are presented to you in these slides. In the first module, we will be discussing on introduction to strategic management. From there we move on to the concept of corporate strategy. Then we come to the strategic management process, the 7S framework, and end this module with corporate policy and planning in India. How did it come about and what is the type of changes that have taken place in the present day context. The second module discusses on the board of directors, their role and functions, the top management role and skills, the board functioning in the Indian context. The third module, we look at environmental scanning. When we look at environmental scanning, we do a synthesis of external factors. This is called industry analysis. This we put it in the form of a matrix, that is an external factor analysis summary, EFAS. Similarly, we do an internal scanning with respect to the organization, where we look at value chain analysis, synthesis of internal factors, and then again come out with an internal factors analysis summary, that is IFAS. This is the third module. The fourth module, we look at strategy formulation. From the IFAS and the EFAS models, we formulate a strategic factors analysis summary, that is called SFAS. Then we look at business strategy, corporate strategy, functional strategy, and strategic choice. The fifth module, we look at the implementation of strategy, then the organization structure, corporate culture, diversification, mergers and acquisitions. The sixth module, we look at the evaluation and control and strategic information systems. The last module covers other strategic issues, R&D, then IT, knowledge management, technology, strategic risk and other issues. So, this course will be covered in these 7 modules. The books suggested for this course are the 2 written by me. One is on strategic management, the Indian context. Prentice Hall has published this book. It has come out it is in the 6th edition. It has come out in the year 2020. I strongly suggest that you purchase this book. Prentice Hall has been kind enough to bring out this book with the help of the Government of India in the Eastern Economy edition, and it is priced very reasonably, can be afforded by almost all of you. The second book which I am going to refer is on case studies in marketing, the Indian context, again published by Prentice Hall. It is in the 7th edition it has come out in the year 2018. Both these books have been quite popular. It is available in all the leading bookstalls in the country. I strongly suggest to you, kindly purchase these books. It is very economically priced and you will find it useful for this course and also in your professional career. If you really look at this subject of strategy or the strategic management, it is not something new to this country. It is as old as the times of the Mahabharata. So, it is nearly 5000 years old. It was during the Mahabharata war that this term strategy or strategic formulation was first used by the Acharya of both the Kauravas and the Pandavas, that is Drona. What was the context? The context was in this epic war of Mahabharata. One side was the Kauravas, the other side was the Pandavas. The Kauravas had 11 Akshohinis and the Pandavas had 7 Akshohinis. What is the difference between the Kaurava army and the Pandava army? An Akshohini has, apart from chariots, horses, elephants, about 1,10,000 foot soldiers. So, the Pandavas had 7 Akshohinis, the Kauravas had 11 Akshohinis, meaning that the Kaurava army numerically was nearly 5 lakh strong with respect to the foot soldiers. Even with this strength of the numerical army, the Kaurava army was really facing terrific decimation at the hands of the Pandavas. And Drona had taken up leading the Kaurava army after the fall of Bhishma. Even after Drona took over as the Senadipati of the Kaurava army, this decimation of the Kaurava army had not stopped. That is where Duryodhana gets concerned, comes to Drona, asks him, Acharya, you are the teacher of both the Kauravas and the Pandavas. Numerically, we are having more numbers, much more numbers than the Pandavas. Still, we are getting decimated in the war. To which Drona replies, Duryodhana, we advised you not to go into this war. That is, I, Bhishma and Vidura. But still you wanted to go ahead with the war based on the advice given by your trusted friends like Dushyasana, Karna and others. Now, For your satisfaction, I will formulate the Kaurava army in a strategic formulation tomorrow, which cannot be pierced by anyone from the Pandavas side except Arjuna. If Arjuna can be taken away from the main battlefield, tomorrow I will ensure that one of the Atirathas from the Pandava army is killed. So, the term strategic formulation was first used by Drona in this context. What is the type of strategic formulation that was done by Drona? It was what is called the chakra vyuha. Translated to English, it means the hub and spokes model. Apart from Arjuna, only one person in the Pandava army knew how to pierce this vyuha, but he did not know how to come out of this vyuha. That is, in this hub and spokes model, what really happens is, once you pierce the vyuha, you get sucked into the center, and coming out of that is a great exercise and an art by itself, which Arjuna only knew. So, what happened in the war? This poor boy Abhimanyu, who knew from his father how to pierce this vyuha, got killed. That was the time, that is where this strategic formulation was used in the Mahabharata war. In the present day context, when was this term strategy used? The term strategy was used in 1965 by this gentleman Ansoff, when he was working for this company Lockheed Aircraft Corporation on a project. So, he used the term strategy in the formal context when he was working on a project with this Lockheed Aircraft Corporation in the year 1965. When was it used in the Indian context? In the Indian context, it was used for the first time by this public sector industry Bharat Heavy Electricals in 1974. When they used this in 1974, they called it corporate planning. What do we mean by that? They said, we want to look at the planning scenario for BHEL for the next 5 years. In other words, for the first time in the country, the concept of corporate planning was introduced by this public sector industry Bharat Heavy Electricals in the year 1974. They said, we want to have a comprehensive exercise on what we want to be after 5 years. That is, what is the type of products we want to manufacture, where do we want to be. In other words, you are looking at a scenario projection 5 years ahead. The next question comes automatically, when did this corporate planning become strategic planning? If you look at the scenario of the country, in 1984, The first public sector undertaking that was started after the country became independent, namely the Indian Telephone Industries ITI, was thrown open to competition. What do we mean by saying ITI was thrown open to competition? The government allowed some of the products which are manufactured by ITI or which were manufactured by ITI till then to be allowed to be manufactured by the private sector. So, in came BPL and other companies that now this was one of the boldest moves by the government to bring in private sector to compete with the public sector. This altered the scenario to a large extent. How did it alter? The public sector industries which were looking at a 5 to 10 years scenario in corporate planning started looking at a smaller time horizon. Instead of 5 to 10 years, they said we will look at a 3-year scenario. This 3-year scenario brought in the concept of strategic planning in the country. So, in other words, this 1984 onwards, when public sector was thrown open to competition, some of the public sectors starting from the telecom sector made the process of planning, especially with respect to time horizons, to shrink from the 10 years or the 5 years to 3 years, and that is where the strategic planning concept started coming into the country. So, in came 1991 when the liberalization came into being. What came with liberalization? Liberalization brought in the IT, that is the information technology services, and also the electronics industry to this competitive scenario. This bringing in of IT and the electronics industry drastically altered the competition in the country. The IT industry started looking at scenarios much less than 3 years. So, they said instead of looking at a 3-year scenario, we would like to look at a 1-year scenario. So, you started looking at a strategic planning exercise for the next 1 year. If you look at the present day annual reports or the presentations in the AGMs of these IT industries, they always refer to one terminology, what is called our guidance suggests. What is this guidance suggesting mean? It is meaning in simple terminology scientific forecasting. So, they are using forecasting tools to look at what will be the scenario with respect to the organization in the next quarter itself. So, instead of going to 1 year, organizations are looking at the next quarter, that is 3 months later, how the organizational scenario is likely to look like. So, the Indian IT industry has done extraordinarily well in this particular exercise, whether it is the Infosys or the Wipro or the TCS. The strategic planning exercises which are done by these IT majors in the country has been remarkable all over all these years, and the country has gained tremendously because of the performance of these IT companies. So, the 1991 onwards scenario brought in terrific transformation in the planning sector with respect to the industry, whereas the 84 competition reduced the time period of planning from 5 to 3 years. We started looking at a 1 year scenario from 1991 onwards. Now, in 2020 plus, we are looking at a scenario for the next quarter. So, if you can see, this is the way the competition dynamics have changed the planning scenario. With this, we will come to this, what do we understand by strategic management in the formal context in organizations. If you look at a formal definition of this strategic planning, strategic planning can be looked at as management processes in organizations through which the future impact of change is determined and current decisions to reach a designed future are made. So, you visualize the scenario, and as I said, we are visualizing the scenario for the next quarter only in the present day context. What does it include? It includes the entire process of major outside interest groups and their stakes, expectations of dominant inside stockholders, information present, past, present and projected future. Then evaluation of company strengths and weaknesses, formulation of organizational purpose, mission, objectives, policies and strategies. Now, when you look at this strategy, what are we looking at? We are looking at long term decisions. These long term decisions, they include objectives, goals and the courses of action. So, as I mentioned to you, first time this type of exercise was done by this gentleman Ansoff when he did work on corporate strategy for Lockheed Aircraft Corporation in the year 1965. What do we understand by the term objectives? This can be explained by taking an example, say a return on investment. The threshold being 10%, that is, let us say I invest 100 rupees. I expect after 1 year at least 110 rupees to come that is the investment should grow to 110 rupees, but the goal will be higher than the limit on the threshold. The goal in the organization will be kept at 15%. So, the return on investment, the threshold 10%, goals 15%. Similarly, with respect to the sales growth, the threshold is 5%, that is in the next year the sales of the organization should go up by at least 5%. So, if you were at 100 during this year, next year you should go at least up to 105. But the goal you are keeping, that is the management is keeping at 10%, that is it must go to 110. Now, if you really look at strategy in the present day context, it can be explained using the concept of vector space. What is this vector space concept? In order to do this, we will take into consideration a simple industry, that is a basic chemicals and pharmaceuticals industry. This is what is called the product market scope. The second vector space here is what is called the growth vector. What is this growth vector? This growth vector looks at product development and concentric diversification. What is this concentric diversification? We will explain when we go along in the coming classes. The second one, the third one, vector space, is on competitive advantage. What is this competitive advantage? We are looking at patent protection, superior research competence. The fourth vector space we are looking at is use of firms' research capabilities and production technology. In other words, these four vector spaces give you, with respect to strategy, what is the type of courses of action that has to be followed by an organization. So, you first look at product market, then we look at growth vector, then we look at competitive advantage, then we look at synergy. This is the type of exercise, in fact, which was first conducted or went into by Ansoff for the Lockheed Aircraft Corporation. Now, what is the term purpose and mission? This purpose and mission, with respect to an organization, is used interchangeably when we look at the planning process. How is it used in an interchangeable manner? We will take into account one or two examples and describe this. What is the purpose of an organization and what is the mission of this organization? We will stop here and continue in the next class. Thank you.